running my 13 Fishing free fall reel. It's an inline style reel. I know it doesn't look like reels that people are used to, especially open water fishermen. And it wouldn't be very effective in open water, to be honest, because you can't cast it. It's not intended for that purpose. But the reason that we run these inline reels, and Bugs will tell you, they kind of look like fly reels. In fact, the first inline reels were fly reels. And the reason that guys were running them is a couple. First of all, when you run a spinning rod and you let the line down, every time that line goes around that spool, it's putting one twist in. So as that line goes down, you're adding twist to your line. And when that lure gets down to the bottom, it starts to unwind that twist. And as that lure rotates, the fish are less likely to strike it during that rotation. So we want to get down there quick, get in the fish's face, and have an opportunity to catch them. We don't want that thing down there spinning and spooking them off. I'm icing up. With an inline style reel, when I let that line down, there's no additional twist. So my lure goes down, it settles in immediately, and you're able to catch a fish right away and not have to wait for that to unwind your twist. The other benefit, a lot of times when we're fishing for bluegill, perch, crappie, even walleye, we're running tungstens. And the reason we run tungstens is because guys want to get down quickly. Tungsten is more dense than lead, so it sinks faster, and then you can run a smaller jig. We run small jigs through the ice because the fish have a long time to look at it. And bigger, a lot of times, means easier to detect flaws. So if they look at it for a long time and they decide it's not food, they'll reject it. So we run tungsten. We can run a little bitty head, still have our bait in their face, but not so much that doesn't look like food. Well, monofilament line floats, and because monofilament line floats, the more of it that gets in the water, the more it counteracts the weight of your jig and slows the fall rate of your jig. Why spend the money to buy tungsten and then run a line that's slowing the drop of your jig? So we run fluorocarbon because fluorocarbon does not float. Even if you're fishing perch in deep water, your fall rate from 0 to 5 and the fall rate from 50 to 55 will be the same. They'll fall at the same rate. With monofilament, it's significantly slower the deeper that jig gets. You can actually, in deep enough water with a small enough jig, get to the point where it won't sink anymore. It'll go down and literally stop falling because the amount of buoyancy of the monofilament and the amount of sink rate of the tungsten are the same. They'll reach an equilibrium and stop dropping. So with monofilament and fluorocarbon, a inline reel has a larger arbor. And because the size of the arbor of that spool is bigger, you don't get as much twist in it. Spinning reels with a small arbor have tight curls, and you'll see that line curl as it goes down the hole. We're trying to avoid that. So I like the inline for the bigger spool, and I like the inline for the lack of twist. That's why we run an inline reel. So as we use these inline reels, there's a lot of options now on the market. Originally, they just used old fly reels, but the fly reels have a very short stem. They're not very convenient to use. And the way we like to hold our rods on the ice, they didn't allow you to do that. So a couple of different companies make them, and there are a lot of options and a lot of price points, to be honest. This reel was one of the first. This particular reel is a 13 Fishing 6061. 6061 refers to a type of aluminum. This is a CNC machined aluminum reel. It's got a solid body, it's well built, the construction is really good. It is a little cold in the hand, which not everybody loves. I don't use this rod in hand as much. I tend to use it as a dead stick rod because I like the drop system on the reel I'm going to show you in a minute. But this was one of the early versions, and it gave you the benefits of the inline reel, but the fly reels don't have a drag system when your hands are on the crank, and they reel in, it's one turn of the crank is one turn of the spool. This reel introduced a 3-to-1 gear ratio and a usable drag to the equation, which for us that are running very light line, like I said, I've got 2 pound on this. I run some 1 on some of my outfits. 2 pound test, obviously you can't get away with much without breaking that line, so you got to be careful. Sorry, I'm just checking for fish. So the drag setting on this, and actually the drags in them are carbon. They're a good drag. It's basically the same drag that's in their high-end bait caster. It moderates nice. It operates good in cold weather. And I got a fish on my jig. Oh. Sorry, I just had one show up in the window there. There he is. Not a big boy. Anyway, obviously they work. Little female bluegill. Going back. So, a superior drag system, a better gear ratio, and longer stem, so it's easier to hold the way we like to hold them. Big benefit of that style of reel. But when it came out, it was fairly expensive. It was a $100 reel when they first introduced it. And they have dropped it. They dropped it 20 bucks. It's 80 now. And it's a very good reel. I would strongly recommend it. However, there are some of us that are still in college, that's not me, that need to, you know, spend a little bit less on some of that tackle. And this was the first company to basically mimic this reel. This particular one is an Eagle Claw, and I have run those before. I don't feel like the drag system is as good on it. It's certainly lighter weight, and it is a little warmer to the touch because it's not metal. However, I don't have the one that I bought because it didn't last that long. I stripped the gears out, and like I said, the drag is not as good if you're running as light a line. However, it's a viable option for somebody that doesn't want to put that kind of money into an ice reel. You will probably see Zach running one, metal one, pretty soon. That kid would live on the ice. If he could build a house out here, he'd be out here all the time. My man loves to ice fish. And I don't blame him. It's a lot of fun, especially when you're catching fish. Now, you notice when I let this one down, I put it in the ice. I have to push a button. I'm using both hands. I let that drop. It gets to the depth that I want it to be at, and I turn the handle, and it actually falls about to the bottom by the time it locks over. So the system isn't 100% perfect. And the people at 13 who are actual fishermen and are out on the ice and running these reels, they're like, man, that'd be cool if we could figure out a way to improve that part of it. The you know, push the button, let the spool go down. Plus, this thing can get pushed in a rod holder or in a carry bag. So it's not as convenient a system of letting the line drop. So they came out with a new version, which is on this other rod. And that's a Black Betty Free Fall. It has this trigger, and that trigger allows me, I can hold the rod safely with 2 fingers, and then I can use a 3rd finger to operate this trigger and drop my bait. I watch it on the deal. When it gets where I want it, I just let go. It stops right now. So it's easier to control. As you can see, it's a one-handed operation. I let that down, I put it where I want it, and I'm fishing. I can do it, literally I could do it with 2 holes and 2 hands, but a little tough to watch the Vex and keep your eye on it, keep track of everything. Like I said, I tend to run this in one hole, and I'll dead stick another hole with that 60-61. And that system works really good for me. I still have the good drag. I still have, sorry, I thought I had a fish up. Still have the good drag, still have the same functionality, don't have the line twist, and I'm golden. I don't have to buy 500 of these, I just need a couple.